Thanks, Jessica. Pleasure to be here. I am here today joined by Sergey Nazarov, co-founder of Chainlink. Sergey, there are a lot of smart people in this space, but I think you are in many ways the rarest of all participants, which is a man with a vision. And I'm extremely excited to get to talk to you today about what that vision is. Sergey, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for speaking with me again. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you.
Sergey, we were talking a little bit off camera. I know we're going to dive into the weeds very quickly, but I think it's important to give people an overall 50,000 foot lay of the land. What's the state of play here in June 2021, the state of play for DeFi and the future of DeFi?
I think it's pretty much clear to the people in our industry that DeFi is a force that's going to continue. That it is kind of like the new token boom that previously happened. That is the new kind of exciting, useful application of blockchains and smart contracts generally. I think beyond that, there's an understanding by the larger crypto community that DeFi is a great place to get the benefits of a blockchain beyond just a token and holding a token. And I've seen a lot more interest from institutions and fintechs and banks about DeFi as an alternative or as a supplement to the existing infrastructure that they already provide their user base access to. So I think what's happened over probably the last, I guess would say 6 to 9 months, is that DeFi went from something that wasn't completely clear, wasn't completely understood, to having the global DeFi summit and a whole bunch of conversations just on this topic, and all the different blockchains and layer twos are feverishly competing to win on the dimension of having the most DeFi applications that are composable. I think where things go from here is that the quality of DeFi applications and the quality of the teams building those applications continues to grow rapidly. Yeah. Because the demand for putting value into DeFi is just also continuing to grow. And that means there's a lot of capital for teams to build applications. There's capital to grow existing DeFi teams. And I think what you end up really seeing is a large composable web of multiple different DeFi protocols that act as interoperable services to each other. And those interoperable services form kind of a large global financial products system. So while a bank might build individual services inside of itself for use by other parts of the bank or consumers that go to the bank, what DeFi is like one big global bank, basically, where anybody can come and build a service, and then that service is usable by the other services. And when I say a service, I mean an on-chain smart contract that defines a DeFi offering, whether that's a derivative capability or whether that's yield generating capability or whatever it is. And so I think what will continue to happen is just like the internet started to accrue more and more services that people could build on top of, and those combinations of services made more and more advanced applications possible. I think the exact same thing is now really getting going with DeFi, is that there's a number of protocols that are interoperating and getting the majority of their value from each other by using each other's unique features. And therefore, the other protocol doesn't need to build it, just like a bank that already has a service running, another department doesn't need to build that same service, right? And this is really the future. And then I think that's just going to be the global nature of financial products that'll eventually be adopted by banks and institutions and so on. But I think that groundwork of those services is being made right about now.
Yeah. So you talk about the groundwork of those services. You talk about the broader DeFi ecosystem. Let's start out on the very ground floor. What is Chainlink? What are hybrid smart contracts? Why do blockchains and smart contracts need oracles? And where ultimately does Chainlink fit into this broader ecosystem you describe?
Sure. So DeFi, in my understanding of it, is actually a hybrid smart contract. So a hybrid smart contract is a combination of on-chain code and off-chain systems. Tokenization contracts are not a hybrid smart contract. They're involved in tokenizing something, putting a ledger on chain, and moving around the ownership of that ledger. Decentralized financial products, in contrast, need external data. So they require knowledge of a price. They require knowledge of market activity. If they're a derivative, they need to know about what happened for the derivative event that they're related to. And so decentralized finance is really the first large-scale, widely adopted hybrid smart contract that effectively combines trust-minimized on-chain code, which is made trust-minimized by blockchains and their ability to come to consensus about the state changes of that on-chain code, and in equal part, the ability to access external systems in a trust-minimized way. And that trust-minimized access to external systems is what oracles and oracle networks do. And the best version of an oracle mechanism is really a decentralized oracle network, which is what Chainlink is. And so Chainlink is a large collection of many, at this point, hundreds of decentralized oracle networks, each performing their own distinct value and service and kind of input of data or generation of randomness or even some amount of computation for the creation of a new, more advanced hybrid smart contract. So for example, if you look at lending, you need data about price. If you want to make a derivatives DeFi product, you need data about what's going on with the derivative. If you want to make a weather insurance product, you need weather data. And you need that data to meet the same high standards as the contract itself. And that requires validation, consensus, decentralized computation in the form of an oracle network. And Chainlink is the largest and most widely used decentralized oracle network and set of decentralized oracle networks, enabling the majority of DeFi to actually operate and function correctly.
Yeah. When I explain oracles to my mother, I say that oracles are the things that fundamentally connect the blockchain to the real world.
Yeah, so oracles are actually a few things. So in their simplest form, they're responsible for delivering data and transitioning information into another environment. In more advanced forms, they're actually responsible for validating the truth. So what our Chainlink networks actually do is they create a definitive truth about what an accurate price is by pulling data from multiple sources and coming to a consensus across a large group of independent node operators. So while the initial value is the provision of data at all, the more advanced value is really the validation of data and the making of that data in terms of its validation and trust, and basically its trustworthiness, creating what we call definitive truth. And now what we're really expanding into is the ability to not only create definitive truth that can control billions and eventually trillions of dollars in value, but also the ability to do computation in that environment in a way that you now have access to trust minimized computation that wasn't available on a blockchain, once again giving rise to more and more advanced hybrid smart contracts, right? So our fundamental goal is to make the blockchain industry about these more advanced hybrid smart contracts like DeFi, insurance, gaming, global trade, ad networks, fraud-proof ad networks that all require this hybrid approach of a trust minimized on-chain component and trust minimized off-chain that's been validated to be true and reliable enough to control the value in the deterministic, immutable on-chain system.
Yeah. I'm looking at the chat streaming by, and there's obviously some very sophisticated viewers who are watching this conversation at the annual Global DeFi Summit. So let's get into the weeds a bit here. Recently, within the last several months, Chainlink produced the Chainlink 2.0 white paper. Two big questions, Sergey. Number one, what is the vision for version 2.0? And number two, where are you along the path to execution of that vision?
Sure, of course. So the vision for 2.0 is really the creation of an abstraction layer that can do all the trust minimized off-chain computation that people do not want to do in a blockchain for whatever reason. Those reasons might be privacy related, they might be cost related, they might be scalability related, they might be capability related, as in the on-chain code simply can't do those things, such as get data. So the consistent trend that we're seeing is that there's more and more applications for Oracle networks due to their flexibility. And what the Chainlink 2.0 white paper is about is that it's actually about two things. So firstly, it's about defining this hybrid smart contract architecture and showing people how that is actually a combination of multiple on-chain contracts interoperating with each other and multiple off-chain services in the form of distinct DONs, decentralized Oracle networks, that also interoperate and basically give the needed resources to the on-chain contracts. So if the initial world of smart contracts was a single on-chain contract about tokenization, and then there was the appearance of a voting contract as a second on-chain contract that interoperated with the token contract, and then DeFi was actually the addition of an Oracle network to provide price data and market data to an on-chain contract about a financial product, then the future is really multiple on-chain contracts or on-chain pieces of code interoperating with multiple decentralized Oracle networks, just like multiple pieces of web server code interoperate with multiple kind of services, right? So the analogy here is really taken from how the web world works, in that you need a decentralized version of composing multiple different important services into more and more advanced applications. And so a hybrid smart contract is really the name for a more advanced smart contract, in that it interoperates with valuable external services. For example, in the web world, if you wanted to build Uber, but you didn't have GPS location from Google of a user, you didn't have the ability to message a user with Twilio, and you didn't have the ability to pay drivers with Stripe, you'd have a big problem building Uber. You probably wouldn't build Uber. And so Uber was this more advanced web application that leveraged all of these other services to create what it created. And that's what hybrid smart contracts are. So the first thing that the paper's about is this hybrid smart contract architecture, which we are already enabling very heavily by providing greater and greater amounts of data, and now various forms of off-chain computation like random number generation, keepers, which are DevOps tools, and various other computations that blockchains inherently don't do and won't do for privacy, capability, or cost or scalability reasons. And so as we provide more of these services, more of these on-chain services that blockchains don't inherently do, we actually enable blockchains to do much more. We enable things like DeFi and decentralized insurance and fraud-proof gaming and fraud-proof ad networks and all the various use cases that smart contracts actually are useful for. So our fundamental goal here is to create an abstraction layer where all of the resources, the data resources, the random number generation resources, the keepers related DevOps tools resources are provided in a trust minimized way, such that somebody could very efficiently compose a hybrid smart contract. We've already taken the development cycle for DeFi down from months to days. And what we want to do is we want to take it down from days to hours, the same way that's the development cycle in the web world. And that's really what I think will accelerate everything, just like the initial appearance of oracles heavily accelerated DeFi. Go ahead.
So is the principal change between version 1.0 and version 2.0 that there's this sort of parameterization or API-ification of the services that are going to be provided and the ability to basically provide additional services through different layers on these sort of cloud-based platforms?
Right. So I think 2.0 is an advanced version of 1.0, where 1.0 was leveraged to make some of the first Oracle networks that power the majority of DeFi. And so that's proven that Oracle networks can serve this purpose of doing a computation that a blockchain can't do, but needs in order to make a more advanced smart contract. What Chainlink 2.0 is really about is expanding the breadth and depth of that capability. So it's expanding beyond just the delivery of data into random number generation, certain amounts of computation via keepers, more advanced off-chain computation that people don't want to do on a blockchain for whatever collection of reasons, which they might eventually choose to do there, but for a certain period of time won't want to do there for those privacy, scalability, or simply because they can't do it. I think what Chainlink 2.0 is really about is it's creating a universe of services and capabilities to make hybrid smart contracts in a very efficient, secure, easy to build way, so that our industry can become about much, much more, right? Our industry can become about reinventing the insurance industry, reinventing the ad network industry, reinventing the gaming industry, which it absolutely can be about, because all of those industries have fundamental trust issues that are they're equally well solved as the trust issues blockchains have already solved, right? So Chainlink 2.0 is really about this abstraction layer where developers can go and build hybrid smart contracts using their blockchain of choice, or actually multiple blockchains in congress with each other, while still getting connectivity and trust minimized computation that they're not getting from a blockchain. And that's a key complement for them to be able to build these more advanced use cases, with DeFi just being the really first example of that dynamic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, as you talk about this broad shift toward DeFi, toward distributed systems, toward blockchains that have the ability to interface with the outside world, I'm curious what your overall overarching picture is on how DeFi is changing existing business models and how it could disrupt or complement, for example, fintechs, banks, and other institutions of a similar stripe.
Yeah, sure. So I think that fundamentally capitalism and really the web world and really the developer world are very, very focused on discovering customer needs, right? So there's all these notions on customer development and how you have to serve the needs of users and customers and so on. And really that just leads all of these banks and fintechs and eventually institutions to just give users what they want. I don't really understand what the question I don't really see a big question mark in all of this. The simple progression that I see as just quite clear in my mind is that just like users require banks, fintechs, and PayPal and others to have custody, because PayPal and others did market research and realized that their user base wants to hold cryptocurrency, and there was just kind of a preponderance of evidence that said, hey, we should do this. This is what users want. This is how capitalism works. If you don't service the user, someone else will service them. We should service them first. And so everybody is now in the bank, in the fintech world, and even in the institutional world, looking how to achieve different custody capabilities, right? How do I custody a Bitcoin? How do I custody some token somewhere? Even though 2 years ago they were saying like, oh, this is going to go away and so on. It doesn't matter like what people's theories are, really. What matters is what demand is and what demand says, because we're all kind of subject to that realistically within capitalism, right? So quite simply, if you reason about it that way, it's just crystal clear, right? Like everybody's going to do custody, everybody's going to custody people's tokens for them, or custody some kind of asset or value in the custody solution they're all feverishly getting now. But that's just like the start of the race. That's not the race. That's not the whole thing, right? That's just once you give somebody custody of something, they actually want to do things with it, right? They want to earn yield. They want to deposit that somewhere. They want to get exposure to some kind of upside from a derivative. They want to use what you're custodying for them to gain a return, right? Like that's what the financial system is largely about for many people in most institutions. It's about getting a return and hedging risk. So you're not going to just as a fintech or a bank or whoever going to custody something and that's it. You check the box and you're done. You're immediately going to have people, almost immediately, you'll probably already have people coming to you and saying, well, if I custody with you, what do I get? Do I get a toaster? Do I get a yield? How much yield? Do you give more yield than the other guy I could custody to? Because my finger's on the button here, and really, your logos are right next to each other, and I could really click either one, and you have a toaster and he has yield, and can you give me a toaster and yield? And at the end of the day, there won't be a choice. Right, just like there wasn't a choice with the internet. Like there was just a point where if you didn't have email, you couldn't do business.
Right.
And at a certain point, people just came to you and said, like, this is how I want to transact with you. And if you weren't able to transact that way, then you didn't transact. And that's like the reason for being for many of these fintechs and banks, right? That they're there to transact. So
Sergey, as we get to talking more about the inevitability of these distributed solutions, I know we could talk about this for another hour, but we're coming up on a hard stop here in less than 5 minutes. I'm curious if you could tell us about how you think smart contracts and Chainlink specifically help society in general, and then also a topic that's been very much debated over the last, say, 90 days about the environmental impact of this world that is becoming, as you say, inevitable.
Yeah, absolutely. So hybrid smart contracts for me have a lot of very positive properties for society, and it's actually probably the main reason I'm working on this for so long and in such a focused way. I personally believe that there are essentially, three unique properties that they have, and then there's a fourth property around incentives. So the first property is that they're highly transparent, which eliminates information asymmetries that lead to things like global booms and busts, like the 2008 crisis. They give people control, which people desperately want now, because the people that they've given control to as intermediaries, whether that's in social media or whether that's in the financial world, those intermediaries haven't lived up to expectations, right? So people want control and are going to want control even more as those intermediaries don't live up to expectations, whether it's Facebook or Robinhood or whoever. And then the third and final one is the global nature of these systems and the permissionless access and global nature of these systems. So in terms of transparency, there are two extremely important properties that benefits really that society will get. The first one is that the booms and busts in the global financial system are fundamentally based on information asymmetry that very few people can exploit, to the detriment of society that often ends up bearing the costs of those extreme booms and extreme busts. Now, while markets are efficient at adapting to information, the systems that give information to markets right now are not efficient at providing information. And therefore, even if markets are efficient at adapting, if they don't have information, like in the 2008 financial crisis, then only a very small subset of people that can really dig and are really kind of digging for information experts can uncover what the information asymmetry is and asymmetrically benefit from it, make a lot of money, while the boom just gets really big and then the bust, right? And that is not the right societal pattern that I think we should be in. I think there should be very transparent systems that actually force transparency. The second thing around transparency is that it'll allow people to know the risks that they're taking with their assets, and the ability to know the risks that you're taking in DeFi are so far superior. Sorry, Ash, go ahead. I can't hear you. You're muted.
As I've just seen in the thread, many of our viewers have said it's really a shame that we only have 30 minutes to do this conversation. It looks like we have about a minute left. Sergey, what would you like to leave us with in terms of the big picture for people who've listened to this conversation and for people who want to hear more? What are the important takeaways that you'd like to leave us with?
I think if you're thinking about joining this industry and you're wondering whether it's real or not because of all the news and the hype, you should consider the fundamental impact that this will have on how the world works. And the fundamental impact will be going from a world of probabilistic promises that people can renege on and that are kind of selectively given to certain groups, but selectively made inaccessible to other groups, to a globally accessible system of promises and guarantees that is guaranteed to work through physics. So the world of, I promised you something as the global financial system, or I promised you something as an insurance company, or I promised you something as some kind of institution, but I'm not going to deliver on that promise, is a world going into the past. And that's a very big change in how the world works.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in this industry, and you're a smart person, you're thinking about, is this a real industry? Do you want to work in this industry? Do you want to help build this industry? I think you should look at it from that point of view,
Right.
and not necessarily all the different noise. And
Sergey,
also, yeah, go ahead.
Perfectly said and very well summarized. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to leave it there. I believe we're about to get the hook here at the 6:30 mark Eastern time.
Sure.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to speak with you again. Thank you.